Assassin's Creed, quite possibly my favorite non-retro gaming series of all time, and one of the strangest, especially if you're a newer fan getting into the series for the first time, maybe with Black Flag or Origins. If you follow the story, it's grown far beyond being about a secret group of hidden assassins that are fighting against another secret group attempting to control the world. Assassin's Creed has layers upon layers of backstory, covering all of human history, and I'd like to go ahead and announce how many different projects I have in the works to cover the whole thing for a really long time. Assassin's Creed should be a cornerstone of this channel, and it will be. Much like Resident Evil, I created an entire timeline project covering much of the main story chronologically. Origins was newly released, but Odyssey and Valhalla didn't even exist yet. Today in 2023, there's a lot of story to be covered, so I'll be recreating that project in a much higher quality and much more detail with the Assassin's Creed story. And then of course there's this series, Assassin's Creed Tales, which I'll use to cover the smaller stories, side stories found in things like printed media, comics, manga, novelizations, and more. Today I would like to focus on one of those upcoming side stories, and actually, you know what, it's more than a side story. Assassin's Creed Forgotten Temple. This is a full-blown sequel storyline to one of the most beloved characters in the entire series, the notorious pirate captain and master assassin Edward Kenway.
Aye. For amongst all the gentlemen of fortune sailing these West Indies, he ranks amongst the most clever.
Before I start, I want to state the obvious. If you haven't played Black Flag or Assassin's Creed Syndicate, there's going to be some story spoilers here. It's required to understand how awesome the storyline is going to be. It's going to launch as a webtoon series on April 24th with the first 6 episodes, and it's going to be told across 150 episodes total in 3 seasons. That's a massive story, and will be the official continuation of Edward Kenway's saga. But what is it going to be about? What questions is Forgotten Temple going to answer? One of the biggest questions fans have is, what did Edward Kenway do after the credits rolled in Black Flag? And that seems to be the main focus of Forgotten Temple. If you don't take a deep dive into the lore, his activities afterwards are kind of a mystery. There was never a Black Flag 2, but we do know quite a bit about his life afterwards from multiple sources. To understand where this is all going, it's crucial to understand what the entire series revolves around. In the Assassin's Creed universe, humanity was created originally as a docile workforce for a much older and more advanced race called the Isu. Over time, the Isu went through several wars, a human rebellion, and an apocalyptic event that shattered their entire civilization. Few of them survived, but humanity endured. Many of the remaining Isu were worshipped as gods until they died off and lived on in the myths and stories of humanity. Their technology was also left behind, scattered and hidden throughout the world. Technology so advanced that to humans it was practically magic. It was beyond human comprehension. Some examples, you've got artifacts like crystal skulls and temples that can show you the location of anyone on Earth, powerful swords, orbs that create illusions, and biological human-animal hybrid monsters, artifacts that keep the Earth's crust stable, a staff that could grant immortality, many others. It's all very strange. Throughout history, those pieces of Eden, as they came to be called, have been found and used to influence the human story. Now let's fast forward to the very end of Assassin's Creed Black Flag. The golden age of piracy was quickly coming to an end. Most of Edward Kenway's fellow pirates either took a pardon and retired, or were hanged by the neck. Edward survived though, and he discovered that his deceased wife had a daughter that he didn't know about. She was born when he already left home, he became a pirate, and she was raised by her mother until her death. This is what essentially caused him to leave his life of piracy behind. He decided to bring his daughter home and be a father. What he did after was uncovered mostly within the events of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and some small story tidbits in Freedom Cry. Here's what we know. In the time shortly after Black Flag, Edward raised his daughter in London, he remarried, and had a son named Haytham Kenway with his new wife. And we all know Haytham, how good of a man he became.
Tell me something. You could have killed me when we first met. What stayed your hand?
Curiosity. Any other questions? Don't think I have any intention of caressing your cheek and saying I was wrong. I will not weep and wonder what might have been. I should have killed you long ago.
We also know that Edward took a part in and he retired from piracy, a very wealthy man. He became a landowner and built his own family mansion. But Edward was still a man of many secrets. He actually continued working with the assassins in London with the British Brotherhood, and he led them alongside another assassin that used the name Miko as co-mentors. We also know that he still had a vast amount of nostalgia for his piracy days. In Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which takes place during the Victorian era in London, over 100 years after Edward's time, you explore his mansion and discover that he had a secret chamber with artifacts from his days as a pirate. And it's revealed that he was still very active in the oceans of the world after the events of Black Flag. At some point, he came across an Isu artifact known as the Shroud of Eden. This basically looked like a blanket that could heal the deepest wounds quickly on whoever was wearing it. In Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the Templar leader Starrick is looking for it, and he uses it to become almost invulnerable. And what does this have to do with Edward Kenway and Forgotten Temple? Well, Edward found it, and he hid it in London with the hopes that the Templars would never lay their hands on it. How did he find it and where? We don't know. Could he have found it inside a Forgotten Temple? And I think this is where the story is going to be headed. It's going to fill that gap between Black Flag and the rest of Edward's life as he sails to different parts of the world in search of Isu artifacts. Could we find out how he originally came across the Shroud of Eden, among many other artifacts I'm sure, and how it ended up back in England? And what other objects is he going to come across? We know he explored beyond just the confines of the Caribbean. The story of Forgotten Temple introduces us to another ancestor of Edward Kenway, a young man named Noah Kim that discovers that he's got a mixed ancestry, including Edward Kenway's genetic memory. And the always nefarious Abstergo captures him and forces him into the Animus to discover the secrets of Edward. And Edward Kenway continues his journey in the year 1725. Now this is about 3 years after the ending of Black Flag. A little bit of time has passed and he finds himself somewhere in Southeast Asia being chased by ninjas. That sounds awesome already. And this is only the beginning of the story. As I said before, Forgotten Temple is going to run for 150 episodes that seem to be connecting those dots between Black Flag and all the info revealed in Syndicate, referring to his activities as an assassin. And another question I have, are we finally going to learn what happened to the Jackdaw? That's another mystery. What happened to Edward's ship? We know that at some point Edward donated his home base and the ship to the assassins, but we also know it ended up underwater, confirmed in Freedom Cry. In that game, you can actually visit the wreckage. I hate seeing it underwater, but you can visit the wreckage as Adewale, but we're never told how it ended up there.
Extraordinary. The last time I laid eyes on the Jackdaw, I surrendered her back to Kenway and set my mind to leave piracy behind to fight for the assassin cause.
As this whole story fully releases, I'll be sure to cover the sequel to Black Flag in much detail, but for now, I would just like to share the excitement of the story possibilities and encourage you to check it out on April 24th when it releases. Edward Kenway is back and I couldn't be happier. What do you think the story is going to cover, and what story beats do you personally want to see? Start the conversation in the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts, I want to hear them.